Hello there and welcome back to a new video. So it is uncontested that it was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar who was the architect of the Constitution of India. That is, it was under his leadership that the Indian Constitution was drafted. Or more precisely, he was the chairman of the drafting committee of the Indian Constitution. Now, since it was taught to us as a historical fact, nobody would ever find a reason to doubt it or question it. But here is an opinion that would probably be very unpopular. Dr. Ambedkar, an economist who supported Marxism, a jurist and a social reformer and a political leader, is known best for his fight against the evil of caste system and the inequality and injustice that comes with this highly divisive hierarchical system. In fact, most of his political and social activism is dedicated to eradicating this evil system or the annihilation of caste. And in 1939, he actually asked for a separate electorate for the minorities or depressed classes in India. We also know about how he converted to Buddhism and spread Buddhism in the land as an alternative for the divisive ideology of Hinduism or the Indian culture. I have always wondered, how can this political leader draft a constitution that considers all Indians as one? A constitution that touches the soul of what the new sovereign India needs, not just one community, one class or one section of the population, but every Indian. Who stood with Muhammad Ali Jinnah and said this: "I read Mr. Jinnah's statement and I felt ashamed to have allowed him to steal a march over me and rob me of the language and the sentiment which I, more than Mr. Jinnah, was entitled to use." Of course, I've never said this out loud. It almost feels like political blasphemy to say it, until of course I made my last video. Turns out Dr. B.R. Ambedkar did not play that prominent pioneering role in the drafting of our constitution. On November 1949, Ambedkar, in his concluding speech in the Constituent Assembly, said, "The credit that is given to me does not really belong to me. It belongs partly to Sir BN Rau, the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly." Now, the Indian Constitution is the lengthiest written constitution, drawn from various sources, inspired from constitutions of different countries around the world. Yet it is so unique in how it treats the fundamental rights, how it describes the directive principles of state policy, and how it balances power within the three pillars of a democracy. Such a proficient and meticulously drafted constitution, don't you think we should at least mention the name of the person who actually drafted it? So that is what this video is all about. By the way, I can't but be surprised at how rigged and biased the Indian education system actually is. Let's first look at the story of the constitution making. It started on 13 December 1946. Jawaharlal Nehru moved the objective resolution, which aimed to declare India as an independent sovereign republic and create a constitution to govern its future. The resolution established general principles to guide the work of the Constituent Assembly. And on January 22, 1947, after rounds of debates, it was adopted. Different committees were formed within the Constituent Assembly. It included Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minorities in Tribal and Excluded Areas, Union Powers Committee, Union Constitution Committee, Provincial Constitution Committee, and so on. They all submitted their reports to the Constituent Assembly between April and August 1947, and those deliberations ended in 30th August 1947. And it was one day prior to that That is, on 29th August 1947, the first Law Minister of our country, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, was also appointed the chairman of the drafting committee. By that time, based on the reports given by the various committees, BN Rau, the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly, prepared a draft constitution. It was completed by October 1947 and given to the review of the drafting committee. BN Rau was once again one of the members of the drafting committee presided by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And the role of the drafting committee was to scrutinize the draft of the text of the constitution prepared by the constitutional advisor, giving effect to the decisions taken already in the assembly and including all matters ancillary thereto or which have to be provided in such a constitution, and to submit to the assembly for consideration the text of the draft constitution as revised by the committee. They were supposed to go over each and every rule, law and word in the draft prepared by BN Rau, which contained 240 draft articles and 13 schedules. And they were supposed to deliberate on it, debate on it, review it, and make sure that it really reflected the sentiment of free, independent, sovereign, democratic India. That process was finished on 21st February 1948, and the draft Constitution of India 1948 was created. The draft consisted of 315 articles organized around 18 parts and 8 schedules. There were 3 readings of the draft constitution with significant debates and reviewings and tweakings for 1 more year, which also included in the assembly. And on 26 November 1949, a final draft was available for enactment and adoption. For BN Rau, the process of creating a constitution for the people of India didn't start in 1947 or even 1946. Born to a well-to-do, highly educated Brahmin family in Mangalore, he entered the Indian civil service in 1910. After taking part in various very prominent bureaucratic and administrative roles that also included the Simon Commission, he was appointed as the officer on special duty in Viceroy's Reforms Office to enable the implementation of the Government of India Act, which was passed in 1935. The 1935 Government of India Act was the one that made the British government transfer the power of the provincial governments to Indian representatives elected by the people of those provinces. Rau's task was basically to study and come up with the best way to implement the Government of India Act so that there is an actual transfer of power from the British bureaucracy to an elected government in each provinces. But that is obviously a very difficult task. An extended analysis for over 2 years, Rau came up with the solution that the Government of India Act has to be considered as a constitution to the country rather than just a legislative enactment or a legislative change. And also it was this Government of India 1935 Act that became the basis of the new constitution of independent India. Rau also started working on a constitutional draft that would solve the vital issue of the demand of Pakistan by Muslim League. He also met with Muhammad Ali Jinnah in 1946 in order to make this constitutional draft a reality. Because in the provincial elections, the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League were in tight competition, and the League started to demand a separate sovereign state for the Muslims, that is Pakistan. But Congress wanted a united India, and BN Rau thought that the solution could be in a constitutional scheme. So he created a 19-page document where India was conceived more as a commonwealth with 3 distinct units: the Hindustan Federation, the Pakistan Federation, and the Indian states and tribal areas. All of these units would be independent sovereign states and would come to an agreement over common interest on defense, external affairs, communication, and customs. Imagine that constitution coming into effect, and imagine a Commonwealth of India. That would have been an amazing plan. That would have solved so much bloodshed and conflict and all of this, don't you think? The next thing he ever did is obviously the draft constitution he created as the constitutional advisor to the Constituent Assembly. In the draft, each article had a marginal note which indicated the original source or the basis of the provision, and the most of them were the Government of India Act 1935. But it also included the Constitution of Ireland, the Canada, Australia, Dancing Constitution, USSR, USA, and so on. And he also consulted with great many constitutionalists and judges and jurists and so on. He met with Justice Felix Frankfurter, who advised him not to include the phrase due process in the Indian Constitution because it would put an undue burden on the judicial system. This volume, created by B. Rau, details every bit of the process of creating our Indian Constitution, and most of it is all about Sir BN Rau's work. So, if you are really interested, you can check it out. I'm actually not minimizing the role of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the making of our Constitution. He was the one who took the rough draft, presided over hours and days and months of deliberation and debates over it, and made it into a constitution with the help of all the others, into the one that would govern India with all the principles of liberty, fraternity, sovereignty, and justice. We cannot deny that. But he is definitely not the person who drafted the constitution. After many more deliberations and considering all the public opinion and integrating all of that, we had our constitution by 26 November 1949. By this description of how our constitution actually came into effect, we see that a large portion of our constitution has actually been taken from the 1935 Government of India Act, which was more or less created by the British. So there was the CRPC, the IPC, a lot of very draconian and anti-India laws or way of administering or creating these laws. And all of them are now being changed by the current government, tweaking them in order to actually fit the needs and the liberty and justice of the Indian people, rather than something created by an outsider, even though with the help of Indians. Indian education system is yet another thing that needs a lot of reformation, because it was also a legacy left by the British government, which we haven't really tried to change much. But I think the first steps towards that change is already happening through new education policy. So we still do hold on to a lot of obsolete and draconian laws and systems that may not really work in accordance to the culture or civilization of our country. Definitely we are changing that. Or as Rahul Gandhi puts it, the Modi government is going to change the constitution, or whatever he means by that.
Bye bye, tata, goodbye, gaya.
I hope you liked this video. If you did, please do hit the like button and also share it with somebody who would love to hear about these. And let me know in the comment section what you think. And don't forget to subscribe, and until we meet next time, bye bye. Well, it goes without saying that I don't have a sponsor yet. But not to worry, I will sponsor my own video. More precisely, my book will. This is the first book that I wrote. It's a realistic fiction novel about 4 teens in a city enmeshed in a life of drugs, love, violence and chaos. A tale of isolation and desperation one feels among known strangers in an unknown city. Well, this book is available on Amazon and Flipkart. The links will be in the description. I will also share the link to the video trailer of the book. So check them out.